Welcome to my channel, the hidden drama where real-life stories unfold and every situation has a lesson. Some will surprise you, some will make you think, and some might feel closer to home than you expect. Now let's get into today's story. I let my brother move into my house after his divorce. He slowly took over everything, even changed the deed without telling me. When I came home from work one day, the locks were changed. He said, "You have nothing left." But he didn't know I had recorded every call and what I did with that footage. I stood there in the dark, staring at the house I'd owned for 12 years, watching my brother walk away from the door like he hadn't just stolen my entire life. The new steel security door gleamed under the porch light before Caleb flicked it off, leaving me standing there with my briefcase in one hand and my phone in the other. The lock was different. Chrome. Expensive. The kind of lock you install when you want to make sure someone stays out permanently. I pressed my hand against the glass panel where Caleb had just held up that folded document, that deed with his name printed where mine should have been, and I felt something cold settle into my chest. Not panic. Not yet. Because Caleb didn't know something that would change everything. He didn't know that I recorded every single phone call we'd had since the day he showed up at my door 6 months ago, desperate and broken after his divorce, begging for help. I'm Elias Ward, 38 years old, a systems analyst who spends his days organizing data and his nights organizing everything else in his life down to the last detail. My coworkers joke that I probably have a spreadsheet for my grocery lists, and they're not wrong. I keep records of everything: receipts, emails, conversations. It's not paranoia exactly, more like a need for control that borders on obsessive, a flaw that cost me my last relationship when Sarah told me she felt like she was living with an auditor instead of a boyfriend. But that same obsession, that same compulsive need to document and archive and preserve every interaction, was about to become the weapon I needed. I walked back to my car, a silver sedan parked across the street because I couldn't even park in my own driveway anymore, and I sat in the driver's seat with the dome light on, scrolling through my phone to the folder I'd labeled simply Caleb Calls. 63 recordings, every conversation we'd had since he moved in. I started playing them from the beginning. "Elias, man, I don't know what I'm going to do." Caleb's voice came through the speaker, that first call from 6 months ago when he'd phoned me at 2 in the morning. "Marina took everything. The house, the savings, she's even going after my truck. I've got nowhere to go." I remembered sitting up in bed, groggy, concerned, feeling that pull of family obligation that had always made me vulnerable to Caleb's requests. "You can stay with me," I'd said, "just until you get back on your feet." I skipped forward through the recordings, listening to snippets. Caleb thanking me, Caleb asking to borrow money, Caleb suggesting he could help with the mortgage payments if I'd let him handle some of the paperwork. Then I heard the one that made my hands tighten on the steering wheel. 3 months ago. "Hey, the lawyer sent over some documents," Caleb had said, his tone casual, friendly. "Just power of attorney stuff so I can help manage things while you're at work. You know, pay bills, handle repairs, that kind of thing. Makes it easier for both of us." And I'd signed them. God, I'd signed them without reading every line because he was my brother, because I trusted him, because my fatal flaw has always been assuming that my careful systems and protocols would protect me when the real danger came from the people I let inside those systems. I kept listening. A week later, "The title company needs you to sign a transfer document. It's temporary, just to help with my credit situation. Once the divorce is finalized, we'll switch it back." I remembered that day. I'd been rushing to a meeting, stressed about a project deadline, and I'd signed the papers Caleb put in front of me while eating a sandwich over the kitchen sink. I heard myself on the recording saying, "Yeah, sure, whatever you need," without even asking what I was signing. My own voice made me sick. Then I found it, the recording from 2 months ago that changed everything. Caleb's voice, low and amused, talking to someone I couldn't quite hear in the background. "Once the deed transfers, you won't even notice," he said, and I heard him laugh. "He trusts me too much. This is almost too easy." There was a pause, then Caleb again. "Don't worry, my brother will take the fall if this goes wrong. He signed everything himself." I played it 3 more times, my heart pounding harder with each repetition. This wasn't just opportunistic fraud. This was planned, calculated, and whoever he was talking to in that background, that faint female voice I could barely make out, had been part of it from the start. I spent that first night in a motel room, the kind of place with scratchy sheets and the smell of old cigarette smoke embedded in the carpet, playing every recording and taking notes. By morning, I had a timeline. By the end of the week, I had evidence of intent. By the end of the month, I had a strategy that would destroy Caleb the same way he tried to destroy me. But my obsessive nature, the same trait that gave me this evidence, also became a problem. I couldn't stop reviewing the recordings. I'd lie awake at 3 in the morning, listening to them again, finding new details, new implications, until my eyes burned and my head ached. I stopped eating regular meals. I called in sick to work twice because I was too focused on building my case to focus on anything else. My boss left me a concerned voicemail that I didn't return. This is what I do when something threatens my sense of order and control. I spiral into it completely, neglecting everything else until I've solved the problem or exhausted myself trying. I contacted a lawyer first. Victor Han had handled my house purchase 12 years ago, a meticulous man in his 50s who wore perfectly pressed suits and kept his office organized like a library. I showed up without an appointment, carrying a folder with printed transcripts of every relevant recording. "Victor, I need help." I spread the documents across his desk. "My brother committed fraud and I have proof." Victor listened to 3 of the recordings, his expression never changing, his fingers steepled under his chin. When the 3rd recording finished, he leaned back in his chair. "This is substantial," he said. "Intent, deception, manipulation of legal documents, but Elias, you need to understand something. Proving fraud is one thing, undoing a property transfer is another." The courts move slowly. I felt frustration rising in my chest, that hot impatience that always gets me in trouble. "So what? I just wait. He stole my house." "You'll get it back," Victor said calmly. "But we need to be strategic. We also need to think about criminal charges, and there's something else." He rewound one of the recordings. "This woman in the background, who is she?" I shook my head. "I don't know." "We should find out," Victor said. "Because if she was involved in planning this fraud, she's liable too, and that gives us leverage." That word, leverage, became my focus. I started investigating. I called Caleb's ex-wife Marina, a conversation I'd been dreading because we'd never been close. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice wary. "Elias, is everything okay?" "Not exactly," I said. "I need to ask you about Caleb's finances during your divorce. Did he try to hide assets?" There was a long pause. "Why are you asking?" "Because he stole my house," I said. "And I think he was planning it while you two were still married." Marina's tone changed completely. "Tell me everything." We met at a coffee shop downtown, one of those trendy places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. Marina arrived exactly on time, a tall woman with dark hair pulled back in a bun, wearing a business suit that suggested she'd come straight from work. She ordered black coffee and sat across from me with the focused intensity of someone who'd been waiting for this conversation. "Caleb hid over $200,000 during our divorce," she said without preamble. "I knew he was doing it, but I couldn't prove where the money went. My lawyers tried everything." I pulled out my phone and played her the recordings, all of them. She listened without interrupting, her coffee getting cold in front of her, her expression hardening with each new piece of evidence. When I finished, she looked at me with something like vindication in her eyes. "He was hiding the money in your house," she said. "That's why he needed the deed in his name. He was going to claim it as an asset he acquired after the divorce." "Can you use these recordings?" I asked. Marina smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Oh yes, my lawyers are going to love this. We're reopening the settlement." That meeting was 3 weeks after Caleb had locked me out. I was still living in that motel room, still obsessively reviewing recordings, still barely sleeping. My hands shook sometimes from too much coffee and not enough food. I knew I was spiraling, but I couldn't stop. This was my nature. When someone threatened my carefully constructed world, I had to restore order at any cost, even if that cost was my own health and sanity. But now I had allies. Victor filed an emergency motion to freeze the property transfer. Marina's lawyers filed a motion to reopen the divorce settlement based on newly discovered evidence of hidden assets and fraud, and I kept gathering more ammunition. I went through Caleb's social media, his emails that he'd carelessly left logged in on my old computer, his text messages from when he'd asked to borrow my phone once because his was dead. Every piece of digital evidence I could find, I catalogued. I found conversations between Caleb and someone named Rachel, messages that made it clear she'd been coaching him through the property transfer. "Make sure he doesn't read the documents too carefully," one message said. "Just keep him distracted." Another, "Once the deed is in your name, you're golden. He can't touch you." Rachel. I finally had a name for the woman in the background of that recording. I dug deeper and found out she was Caleb's girlfriend, someone he'd been seeing even before his divorce was finalized. She worked in real estate, which explained how she'd known exactly how to manipulate the property transfer documents. I sent everything to Victor, who sent it to Marina's lawyers. The legal net was tightening around Caleb, but I wanted more. I wanted him to feel the same shock and betrayal I'd felt standing on that porch, locked out of my own house. I wanted the confrontation to be public and devastating. So I waited. Victor advised patience, but patience has never been my strength. I started driving past my house at night, watching the lights in the windows, seeing Caleb moving around inside my home like he belonged there. Once I saw him through the front window, drinking beer with friends, laughing. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I wanted to march up there and drag him out into the street. But I didn't, because revenge, real revenge, required planning, required documentation, required the same obsessive attention to detail that had gotten me into this mess in the first place. 2 months after the lockout, Victor called me. "Caleb's hosting a party at the house this weekend," he said. "According to the social media posts, it's a housewarming party." I felt a grim satisfaction settle into my chest. Perfect timing. "We have the court order," Victor continued. "Property transfer is voided pending investigation. We also have the officer ready to serve him with notice of fraud charges and the subpoena for Marina's reopened settlement case. We can do this Friday night." "During the party?" I asked. "Maximum impact," Victor said. "Unless you want to wait for something more private." I didn't even hesitate. Friday night, during the party. That week felt like it lasted forever. I couldn't focus on anything else. I barely showed up to work, and when I did, I stared at my computer screen without seeing it. My coworkers asked if I was okay. I told them I was dealing with a family situation, which was technically true. My obsessive nature had consumed me completely by this point. I'd lost weight. I had dark circles under my eyes. I kept playing the recordings over and over, memorizing every word, every inflection, preparing myself for the moment when I'd finally confront Caleb face to face. Friday arrived. I met Victor and Officer Daniel Rios, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s with a calm demeanor and a thick folder of legal documents, outside my house at 8 p.m. Music thumped from inside. I could see people through the windows, drinking, laughing, celebrating in my home. "You ready?" Victor asked. I nodded. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward for 2 months. Officer Rios knocked on the door. Loud, official. The music inside lowered. I heard footsteps. Then the door opened and Caleb stood there with a beer in his hand, wearing a confident smile that started to fade when he saw who was on his porch. "Elias," he looked confused, then annoyed. "What are you doing here? I thought we were done with this." "We're just getting started," I said, and I heard my voice come out cold and controlled in a way that surprised even me. Officer Rios stepped forward. "Caleb Ward." "Yeah." Caleb's smile was completely gone now. "We're serving you with notice of property fraud, identity manipulation, and concealed asset transfer during divorce proceedings." Rios handed him a thick envelope. "You're also being served with a subpoena to appear in court regarding the reopening of your divorce settlement." Caleb's face went pale. His friends had gathered behind him in the hallway, watching with drinks in their hands and confused expressions. I stepped into my house, uninvited but legally entitled, and looked around at all these strangers in my living room. "Everyone needs to leave," I said. "This house is under legal seizure pending fraud investigation." Caleb finally found his voice. "You can't do this, the house is mine, I have the deed." I pulled out my phone, pulled up the recording and played it loud enough for everyone to hear. Caleb's voice filled the room. "Once the deed transfers, you won't even notice. He trusts me too much. This is almost too easy." I watched Caleb's face change as he realized what he was hearing. Shock, then anger, then something close to fear. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. "I recorded every conversation we had," I said. "Every phone call, every discussion, all of it." His friends were already grabbing their coats and leaving, uncomfortable and awkward, not wanting to be part of whatever this situation was becoming. Within 5 minutes the house was empty except for me, Caleb, Victor and Officer Rios. Caleb set his beer down on the coffee table, my coffee table, and tried to collect himself. "Those recordings don't mean anything, I was joking." "You weren't joking," I said. "You were planning. You manipulated me into signing over my house using forged power of attorney documents. You hid assets during your divorce by transferring them into my property. And you did it all with the help of your girlfriend Rachel, who I'm sure will be interested to know that she's also facing fraud charges." Caleb's jaw tightened. "You have no proof Rachel was involved." "I have emails," I said, "text messages, digital records of every conversation you had with her about how to steal my house. And the best part, I have her voice on one of the recordings coaching you through the whole thing." That wasn't entirely true. I had her voice in the background, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. But Caleb didn't know that, and I saw the lie land. His shoulders sagged. Elias, come on, we can work this out, we're brothers. We're brothers, I said, and I felt something cold and final in those words. You stopped being my brother when you decided my trust was a weakness you could exploit. Victor stepped forward with another document. The deed transfer has been voided. The house reverts to Elias Ward effective immediately. You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings, after which anything remaining will be considered abandoned property. Caleb looked at Officer Rios. This is insane. You can't just kick me out. Actually, we can, Rios said calmly. You're currently occupying property under fraudulent pretenses. Mr. Ward is being generous by giving you 72 hours instead of having you removed tonight. I watched Caleb process this, watched him cycle through emotions, anger, desperation, calculation. He turned back to me. What about the money I put into this place? Repairs, improvements. You didn't put money into this place, I said. You put my money into this place. Money you took from my accounts using the power of attorney you obtained through fraud. I have bank records, I have receipts, I have everything, Caleb. That's what you never understood about me. I keep records of everything. He tried one more time. Marina put you up to this, didn't she? She's poisoning you against me. I felt my temper flare, that quick anger that's always been my weakness, and I stepped closer to him. Marina didn't have to poison me against you. You did that yourself. You looked me in the eye every day for 6 months while you were stealing my house. You ate dinner with me, you watched movies with me, you acted like my brother while you were planning how to destroy my life. That's on you, not Marina, you. My voice had risen, and I could hear the emotion cracking through. The hurt underneath the anger. This was another one of my flaws. When I finally let myself feel something, it came out too strong, too raw. Caleb saw it and tried to use it. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice shifted to something softer, more pleading. I was desperate. The divorce, the debt, I wasn't thinking clearly. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. I'll sign the house back over. We'll pretend this never happened, just don't press charges. I looked at him for a long moment, this person who shared my blood and my childhood and absolutely nothing else that mattered. No, I said simply. Victor handed me a new set of keys, the ones Officer Rios had confiscated from Caleb. The locks will be changed again tomorrow, Victor said. The security company is coming at 9 a.m. to install a new system. Caleb will not have access. Caleb stood there in the middle of my living room looking lost, and I felt absolutely nothing. No sympathy, no regret, just a cold satisfaction that the order had been restored. 72 hours, I repeated. After that, your belongings go to the curb. Officer Rios escorted Caleb out. I watched through the window as my brother walked to his truck, the same truck Marina was supposed to get in the divorce, and drove away. When his taillights disappeared around the corner, I finally let myself breathe. Victor put a hand on my shoulder. That was the easy part, he said. Now comes the legal process. Criminal charges, financial restitution, Marina's settlement, reopening. This is going to take months. I have time, I said, and I have evidence, he smiled. Yes, you do, more than I've ever seen in a case like this. Your obsession with documentation just saved your life. He meant it as a compliment, but I heard the truth in it too. My obsession had saved me, but it had also consumed me. I'd lost 2 months of my life to this revenge, neglected my job, my health, my friends. I'd let Caleb's betrayal take over everything until there was nothing else in my world except the need to make him pay. Was that better than what he'd done? I didn't know. I didn't care. The next few months were exactly as Victor predicted, a grinding legal process that required patience I didn't have. The criminal fraud charges moved forward. Caleb hired a lawyer who tried to argue that the recordings were inadmissible, but Victor had already confirmed that recording phone calls was legal in our state as long as one party consented, and I had been that party. Caleb's lawyer tried to argue that I had manipulated him into making those statements, which was laughable given the content of the recordings themselves. Marina's lawyers reopened the divorce settlement and immediately found the hidden assets Caleb had transferred into my house. The $200,000 he'd claimed he didn't have suddenly appeared in property improvements, furniture, and a series of suspicious cash deposits that Caleb couldn't explain. The judge was not amused. Mr. Ward, the judge said during one hearing, her voice sharp with disapproval, you deliberately concealed assets during divorce proceedings, committed fraud against your own brother, and showed a pattern of manipulation and deception that this court finds reprehensible. The settlement is hereby voided, and we're starting from scratch with full financial disclosure. And I'm warning you now, if I find one more hidden asset, one more lie, one more attempt at deception, I will hold you in contempt. Caleb sat at his lawyer's table looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Gone was the confident charm, the easy smile, the casual manipulation. He looked tired, defeated. Marina testified about the financial abuse she'd endured during their marriage, how Caleb had controlled their accounts, hidden money, and gaslit her into thinking she was paranoid when she questioned his spending. She cried on the stand, and I realized that Caleb hadn't just betrayed me. He'd been doing this his whole adult life. I was just the latest victim. The new settlement awarded Marina almost everything. The house they'd owned together, which Caleb had somehow kept in the original divorce, the truck, the savings, the retirement accounts. And because Caleb had committed fraud, the judge added punitive damages that left him owing Marina an additional $100,000. Caleb's criminal trial came 4 months after I'd confronted him at the house. I testified, playing the recordings in a courtroom while a jury listened to my brother casually admit to stealing from me. His lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, as someone with a grudge who had manipulated the situation, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and came back with guilty verdicts on all counts: fraud, forgery, identity theft, and financial exploitation. The judge sentenced Caleb to 18 months in prison and ordered him to pay full restitution for all legal fees, property damages, and financial losses I'd incurred. He was also ordered to pay restitution to Marina for the hidden assets. The total came to over $400,000, money Caleb didn't have and would probably never have. I watched him being led away in handcuffs and I waited to feel something: triumph, justice, closure, but mostly I just felt tired. Rachel, his girlfriend who'd helped plan the whole thing, took a plea deal and testified against Caleb in exchange for probation and community service. She was a real estate agent who'd lost her license over the fraud charges, and she admitted in court that she'd met Caleb specifically to help him hide assets from Marina. Their whole relationship had been transactional, a partnership in crime that fell apart the moment the evidence came out. I moved back into my house that same week, walking through rooms that felt both familiar and strange. Caleb had changed things, painted walls, rearranged furniture, installed new fixtures. I spent the next month putting everything back the way it was, restoring the order he'd disrupted, but some things couldn't be restored. I kept finding reminders of his presence: a coffee mug in the back of a cabinet, a jacket he'd forgotten in the closet, notes he'd written to himself stuck to the refrigerator. I threw them all away, but the memories remained. I thought about that recording I'd heard, the one with the woman's voice in the background. Rachel had admitted to being involved, but when I listened to that specific recording again, really listened, I wasn't sure the voice was hers. It was too soft, too distant, slightly different in tone. I brought it up to Victor during one of our final meetings to settle the legal fees. "Do you think someone else was involved?" I asked. "Someone we didn't catch," Victor considered it. "Possibly, but without clear evidence there's nothing we can do. Rachel took the fall along with Caleb. If there was a third party, they got away clean." That bothered me more than it should have. My obsessive need for complete information, for every detail catalogued and explained, couldn't handle the idea of a loose end, but I forced myself to let it go. The house was mine again. Caleb was in prison. Marina had gotten justice. I had won. So why didn't it feel like winning? I went back to work, trying to rebuild the professional reputation I'd damaged by calling in sick and missing deadlines during my obsessive revenge planning. My boss was understanding but firm. "You're good at what you do, Elias," she said, "but you can't let personal issues consume you like this again. It's not healthy." She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something and changing it are different things. I still checked the recordings sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep. I still drove past places Caleb used to go, looking for I don't know what. I still felt that compulsive need to review, to analyze, to make sure I hadn't missed anything. 6 months after Caleb went to prison, I got a letter from him. It was short, written in his familiar handwriting on prison stationery. "Elias," it said, "I know you won't believe this, but I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught, sorry I did it. You were always the good one, the responsible one, and I resented that. I wanted what you had, the stability, the house, the life that made sense. I thought taking it would make me feel better. It didn't. I know I can't fix this. I know you'll never forgive me, but I wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I stopped being your brother a long time ago. I hope you find peace. Caleb." I read the letter 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden meaning, for some angle he was playing, but it seemed genuine, which somehow made it worse. If he'd been defiant or angry, I could have dismissed it. This apology, too late and too empty to matter, just left me feeling hollow. I threw the letter away. Then dug it out of the trash an hour later and filed it with all the other evidence. Because that's who I am, that's who I'll always be, the person who keeps records, who documents everything, who can't let go even when letting go would be healthier. Marina called me a few weeks later. I wanted to thank you, she said, for the recordings, for standing up. I know it cost you a lot to go through all this. It cost Caleb more, I said. He needed to lose more, she said quietly. For what he did to both of us. We talked for an hour, sharing stories about Caleb's manipulations, his lies, the small ways he twisted reality to make himself the victim and everyone else the problem. It was cathartic in a way I hadn't expected, talking to someone who understood exactly what it felt like to be betrayed by someone you trusted completely. Do you think he'll change? Marina asked eventually. I don't know, I said honestly. I hope so. But I'm not waiting around to find out. That became my new normal. Living in my house alone again with better locks and a security system that probably cost more than necessary. Going to work, maintaining my routines, keeping records of everything because that's what I do, but trying not to let the obsession consume me the way it had during the revenge. Some nights I still listened to the recordings, particularly that one with the unidentified woman's voice. I'd enhanced the audio file as much as I could, but I couldn't make out what she was saying, just fragments. Don't worry and he won't, and something that might have been later. It bothered me. It still bothers me, because somewhere out there is someone who helped Caleb plan this fraud, someone who coached him through stealing my house, and I don't know who she is. Rachel swears it wasn't her in that particular recording, and I believe her. Her voice is different, sharper, more direct. This voice was softer, careful, calculated. Victor thinks I'm paranoid, that I'm seeing conspiracy where there's just background noise. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm letting my obsessive nature create problems that don't exist. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm missing something, that the revenge I executed so perfectly, the justice I achieved with such overwhelming evidence, left one person untouched, someone who knew exactly what Caleb was doing and helped him do it. Someone who might have been the real architect of the whole plan. I've tried to let it go, I've tried to move on, but every few weeks I find myself listening to that recording again, trying to identify that voice, searching for the missing piece that would make everything make sense. My therapist, who I started seeing after everything settled, says this is part of my need for control. You can't control other people, she tells me. You can only control how you respond to them. You got your house back, you got justice, that has to be enough. I know she's right. But at night when the house is quiet and I'm alone with my thoughts and my carefully organized files, I pull up that recording one more time and I listen to that voice saying, don't worry. My brother will take the fall if this goes wrong. And I wonder who she was, what role she played. Whether she's still out there helping someone else destroy someone else's life, I'll probably never know. The case is closed. Caleb is in prison. Marina has moved on. Rachel lost everything and learned her lesson. The revenge succeeded beyond anything I could have planned. But that voice, that mystery, that one unanswered question continues to haunt me in a way Caleb never could. Because the truth is, I didn't just want revenge, I wanted complete understanding. Total knowledge. Every detail explained and catalogued and filed away in its proper place. And I didn't get that. I got justice, yes. I got my house and my life and my victory. But I didn't get closure. And maybe that's the real consequence of revenge. Not that it consumes you while you're planning it, though it does. Not that it costs you time and energy and parts of yourself you can't get back, though it costs all of that. The real consequence is that revenge never answers the questions that really matter. It never tells you why people betray you or how to prevent it from happening again. It just ends one chapter and leaves you wondering what you missed in all the others. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next story.